In times of crisis like the COVID-19 pandemic, many people want to reach out and help, but don't know how. On this episode of Dynamic Developer, I'm talking with a coder about how he's using his talents to make a difference in his community and help get food from farmers to folks who need it. I'm your host, Bill Detweiler, and this week I'm talking with Tom Monks, a developer and project manager who's using his time and skill to help his community respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. Tom, thanks for being here today. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, Bill. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I know we're going to talk about the work that you're doing in response to the COVID pandemic and some of the work you're doing with the COVID accelerator. But before we get there, I wanted to talk a little bit about your background, right? So how did you tell me a little bit about your normal day to day, where you were working before you started doing this, your background as a developer?
I started as a developer in college. I originally went to school for computer science and got my bachelor's here at Clarkson University in Northern New York. But then I ended up working mostly outside of that area as a project manager for Hewlett Packard for about 10 years. I recently transitioned back into a more technical role. I decided I enjoyed the project management, but I really wanted to get back into technology because I've always loved to code and just love technology in general. So a couple of years ago, I transitioned to a role at our local county hospital as a computer programmer, and I've kind of been going back through learning JavaScript and working through the free code camp curriculum to kind of get my tech and my coding skills back up to date. So day to day, in my day job as a computer programmer, I work on maintaining a medical data interfaces between our electronic health record system and other organizations like the Department of Health, and making sure that the information can flow between those two to meet different regulations for our hospital. So I do a little bit of programming there, actually quite a bit of project management, ironically enough.
So what was it about the project management to a more technical role transition that really, you said you liked the kind of the technical side of things and you liked coding. I talk to a lot of people that tend to go the other way. They have a CS degree, they did some development, they started out and then maybe they get a PMP certification and then they move into kind of managing products more than sort of writing code every day. Talk a little bit about going the other way. Was it a challenge beyond sort of learning, relearning some of the skills you maybe learned in college but hadn't used in a while, or like you said, you did some learning new languages that maybe you hadn't learned back then, but they were being used now. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, it was definitely a transition. I had done some projects throughout my career as a project manager, dealing with software and building access databases. So some things that were kind of technical. So my technical skills weren't completely dormant. Um, but it was definitely a transition, coming back to a more technical role. I definitely felt, starting that role, at kind of a disadvantage, going from more of a leadership role back into something that was technical. And I've definitely had my doubts about whether it's the right choice or not. But I'm finding ways now, both through my day job and through the work that I'm doing on COVID to kind of combine the best of both worlds. To bring what I learned as a being a leader and as a project manager, as well as my technical skills that I'm kind of bringing up to date now as a programmer.
And did you find that people, other team members, or different teams that you work with, found those sort of skills valuable, right? I mean, we talk about sort of people being specialists and only kind of really focusing on one thing, but it's harder and harder in a crowded market to stand out as an entry level, as a new developer, right? So I talk to a lot of people about having other skills, being able to bring sort of other skills to the table. Do you think that those PMP, those project management and those sort of project leadership skills helped you maybe stand out a little, or at least work a little better with some of the other teams that are doing that kind of work?
Yeah, I definitely do. I think, at the time when I was transitioning, I didn't have a lot of value for the experience that I had gotten as a project manager. It was just kind of like the logical path that I took throughout my career, and so that transition was a time for me to kind of take charge of my career and move in the direction I really wanted to. But since then, I've the projects that I've worked on, I've really come to value my experience as a project manager much more because just simple things like being able to set up meetings and bring other teams to the table and work cross functionally. Be able to communicate well and document meeting minutes and action items. I think it's made my projects much more effective, and I've been happy with a lot of the things that I've been able to accomplish my day job as a result.
All right. Well, let's get to the main reason we're here to talk a little bit about what you're working on with COVID-19. How did that come about?
For the past probably almost a year now, I've been getting involved in the kind of the semi-local tech community. There's not really much of a tech community where I'm at, as we're in northern New York, in Lewis County, with a population of about 27,000. So it's a pretty rural area. But in Syracuse, which is an hour and a half from us, there's a pretty thriving tech community there. So I've been getting involved in a Code for America Brigade, Code for Syracuse, and starting to get into technology and code for good projects, which is something that's always really inspired me. So when the pandemic hit, in like mid to late March, um, I was working with Code for Syracuse, and we were kind of looking around for different projects that we could get involved in. Because at the time we were just working on a refresh of our website. We didn't have anything, super meaningful and impactful to work on. So all the team members started looking around online just to see, how can we use technology to help out with this whole situation? How can we really make a difference? And we started looking at websites like helpwithcovid.com, which has a ton of projects on there, using technology in all kinds of interesting ways to help out with the pandemic. And that site led me to COVID Accelerator, and which was one of the projects that was listed on there. And I started checking them out, and they seemed very approachable. They had a daily Zoom call to introduce new members, so I jumped on there one weekend in early March, and that was how I got started.
How did that first call go?
Really well. I was kind of nervous, jumping into something I really had no idea about it, and I just kind of had this vision of these really brilliant tech people from San Francisco, and they are brilliant tech people from San Francisco, but they're all very approachable. Um, so I jumped on. There was probably 6 or 8 people on that first call. Introduced myself and started to get to know Tito, the founder, or the co-founder, and some of the other folks there. And and then it just so happened, serendipitously, that Tito needed help, and he put out a call for help that day with automating their onboarding process for the accelerator, because at that time they were growing very quickly. I think they had around 600 members in their Slack workspace, and they were struggling with how manual it was to have new members sign up and then get them invited to the Slack and get them added to their Google sheet where they're tracking the members, and bringing them all on board and getting them in the right channels and getting them hooked into the project. So Tito was asking for help with that, and automating those kinds of things with Zapier was something I had experience with. So I volunteered to take that on, and that was how I really started getting involved in the accelerator.
And was that, you said that first call sort of went really well, but was it hard to integrate with teams that are, remote like that to bring people together that maybe hadn't worked together before?
Not really. I have a lot of experience working remotely. Actually, as I worked remotely for 10 years as a project manager. That was all work from home. So I'm pretty comfortable with working from home and working over email and chat and lots of conference calls. So I didn't find that part too hard. I was uncertain. Um, when I first joined, whether I could really find a way to contribute or not. As these projects seemed, really impressive. I'd watched a webinar before I joined about a few of the projects that had already launched within 2 weeks, and they were doing really impressive things. They launched these national websites to, help um, support local small businesses by selling gift cards and things like that. So I was surprised how approachable it was, and how easy it was to jump in and get involved and find a way to contribute.
So let's talk about those projects. What was the first project that you worked on?
The accelerator itself was the first project I worked on. I spent the first week or two helping to automate that onboarding process. Um, so that was using um, Zapier along with some JavaScript to automate onboarding emails. So when somebody filled out the form on their website saying that they wanted to join COVID Accelerator, then we use Zapier to send out a couple emails with a delay in between, giving them the information they need to join the Slack, and then putting their information into an Airtable database, and then we had another Zap that would, once a new member if I actually joined the Slack, it would take their email address, go out to Airtable, see what skills they selected, and then use JavaScript to translate those into Slack channels, and then add them to all the appropriate channels, like whether they're a project manager or a marketer or a programmer, to get them into all the right channels. So that was the first project that I worked on.
I was going to say how long did you work on that? About 2 weeks, you said, or how long did it take to kind of get it to where you thought that it was ready for prime time? Or
I think within the first week, we really had that pretty much ready to go. And then for another week, I kind of, supported and tweaked that, and then started looking for another project after that.
okay, and you were going to sort of go into that next project. What was the next one that you started working on?
Yeah, so I had in mind that I would find somebody else with this inspiring project that I could join and hopefully contribute to in some way, and I wasn't sure whether it would be programming or not, but I just it just so happened around that time that someone here in my local community, a farmer that lives just a couple miles from me, posted on Facebook um, about uh, they were buying or they saw some eggs for sale from another farm, which they couldn't sell through the normal means. So they were selling them dirt cheap just to get rid of them and avoid having to throw them out. So she bought like 230 dozen of them and donated them to our local school's meal program, which serves people in the school district, with school-age children and that are out of school and depend on the school for meals while they're there. So that idea just really inspired me, and I think a lot of other people in my community, because at the time we're seeing a lot of stories in the news about all this food going to waste. Although stores are selling out of things, on the other hand, we have farmers dumping thousands of gallons of milk and just mulching up vegetables because they can't sell them to the restaurants and the schools, which are closing down, and they can't just flip a switch to sell them elsewhere. Um, so it's kind of supporting the farmers, while they're struggling. It's saving that food from going to waste, and then it's also getting it to people that are in need. And we know that the unemployment rate is skyrocketing, so we have a lot more people that are food insecure than usual. So I reached out to her and asked her. It took a couple tries to get a hold of her, but I asked her if there's any way I could help organize that, because I just loved that idea and I wanted to see if we could take it farther. And then one thing led to another. We got connected on that and brought in some more people, and that became evolved into the project that I ended up working on and bringing back to the accelerator to get help with it there.
And is that project ongoing now? What's the state of it? Is it
It is, yep. We call it farm to community. So it's so far, so the basic idea is that we do fundraising within the local community, and then use those funds to buy excess products from local farmers at cost. Ideally, products that they can't sell through the normal means, we want to at least give them something to reimburse them, and help them keep things running. And then we donate those to our local school meal delivery program here, the South Louis School District. So that's going pretty well. We've raised a little over $2,300 now, and we've organized deliveries of local milk, eggs, beets, radishes, maple syrup, and cheese sticks, which were donated from the local craft foods plant. Um, so that's progressing, and I'm working with the team in the accelerator to see how we can kind of spread this idea. It seems to have gotten a lot of traction here locally, and a lot of people here, and as well as in the accelerator, are really inspired by it. So we're working on kind of seeing how we can make what we've done here repeatable, and bring this to other locations and other meal delivery programs. And we actually have a call scheduled for tomorrow with a second school district in the area, which is interested in implementing the same thing. So hopefully we'll be growing this more.
And how does the solution actually work? I mean, how did you all actually make sure that farmers got connected with the right outlets for their products? How did you collect the payments? Talk a little about how you brought it all together.
Yeah, so that was a big part of what has allowed us to make this much progress, is just getting in place. We used the GoFundMe campaign, and made a Facebook page, to get the word out in the community. And I set up weekly Zoom meetings with the people that are involved. This farmer that started this whole thing is very well connected in the community, very passionate about the cause. So she's been a tremendous help in knowing who to bring in. So we brought in additional volunteers, some school employees, the director of the meal delivery program, and some people from our local farm bureau. So we've got all the right people involved. We have weekly Zoom meetings, and then just putting in place those basic existing technologies like GoFundMe and a Facebook page. And we're using an Airtable form to allow farmers to sign up to say that they have products that they would like to contribute, as well as like new volunteers that want to help organize this and spread it to other delivery systems.
So once a farmer comes in, signs up for the program, then what happens with that information? Is it broadcast out to everyone on the other end of it? Do you have a system that somehow tracks that? How does that information get to someone who can take action with it, I guess?
The other piece that I forgot to mention is our Slack workspace. So I hadn't used Slack a lot until I got involved in Code for Syracuse, and then even more so with the accelerator. And I've come to really value how that enables much faster collaboration than having to wait for weekly meetings and then track everything through email, which gets kind of tedious with a large group of people like this. So we set up a Slack workspace, and then use the Airtable integration. So whenever anyone fills out that form, whether it's a new volunteer or a farmer with product they'd like to contribute, that gets dumped right into our general channel and Slack, so everybody gets it and gets alerted right away.
Okay. So, I mean, it really is sort of the bringing together of a lot of off the shelf solutions that allows you to move pretty quickly.
Yeah, exactly.
And is that something that you had experienced before in terms of project management, or as a developer and programmer in your current job, is being able to look at a problem, know what you kind of want to do know how you want to kind of solve the problem, but then look for the right solution, right? There are a lot of different possible solutions, but maybe if you were going to write code to do all this, it was going to take a long time, right? It's just not practical in this situation. So you were looking for that. Talk a little bit about how you picked the platforms, just how you brought that sort of experience maybe to bear.
Yeah, absolutely. So I came into this, COVID accelerator, thinking that I would get involved in a project where we would be, doing a lot of coding and designing some app or web app or website. Um, but yeah, and I think that's something that I've gotten a lot of experience with, and kind of developed being a project manager is using all these great existing web applications that are really great for helping people collaborate. I did a lot as a project manager um, with SharePoint and having SharePoint lists. There was so much benefit we got out of just having everybody work from basically the same spreadsheet. I mean, it's almost the same thing as Google Sheets, but just having a shared sheet that everybody can work with, instead of having everybody having separate spreadsheets and then having to keep them in sync. So just using existing collaborative tools like that. Well, it might not be as fun as coding something custom. It's effective to get people to get things rolling, and to get people on the same page.
And that's really what it's about, right? Is actually finding a solution to the problem that works, and especially now in the midst of the pandemic, doing it as quickly as possible.
Yep, absolutely.
So, actually, I know we talked a little bit before this. This is an awful lot of effort and work and energy. What was it that let you sort of spend the time the last few weeks doing this?
Yeah, so in late April, as I was starting to get involved in the accelerator, and starting to get more and more concerned about working at a hospital and being exposed to potentially exposed to the virus, and bringing that home to my family. They asked for about 40 volunteers at our hospital to take a temporary furlough. So we would be put on furlough for 8 weeks, and able to collect unemployment during that time. So the timing was good. It made me and my family feel safer, and then it also gave me time to work on this work, and finding a way that I could contribute to the whole situation with coronavirus.
And I mean, I think that's such a great message because, you could have sat at home and done nothing, or, just, uh, no, I was going to say go somewhere, but there's nowhere to really go right now on vacation. But instead, sort of, you're using that time to do good and to help others as best you can, and sort of use those skills. And I think that's something, a really powerful message, and something hopefully we see more people do. So how much time do you have left, I guess, on your furlough that you're going to be able to help with the accelerator? And then do you plan to keep working on it when you go back?
Yeah, I definitely do. This is definitely something that I'll never stop doing. So I've got about 3.5 weeks left to spend in this full time, but hopefully by then I can get things with farm to community running without too much involvement by myself, or from myself. So if I'm successful, then I can kind of automate my way out of this, so that at least it's repeatable and scalable, and we can put something in place where this doesn't need my constant attention to run it. But I definitely still want to stay involved in the accelerator and farm to community. I've met a lot of great people, and built a lot of great relationships, and I definitely want to continue, excuse me, to continue doing this work.
So, for other people who watch this interview or listen to us and want to get involved in something similar, what advice would you give them? Whether generally about sort of getting involved or looking for opportunities in their local community, or specifically about working with this group, working with COVID Accelerator.
Yeah, I would say two things. I would look for a cause that you really connect with. I think as this whole pandemic started, I just really connected with the food issue. And it just really resonated with, and struck me how um, how the situation was getting so much worse, and how sad it was to see people in our own country spending hours in line for waiting to get the food banks to get the food that they need, and hearing some really sad stories about people not having enough food to just get through the week. So so that cause just really resonated with me, and I think having the passion about the cause has really given me a lot of drive to keep pursuing this, and getting outside of my comfort zone, and getting involved in ways that I may not have dared to otherwise. And then the other thing is, just just to, you know, I started this not knowing whether I would be able to contribute in any way or how I was going to be able to contribute. So I think that there's room for, you know, anybody that's passionate and driven to make a contribution, no matter what their background or their skill set, to get in and really make a difference. I mean, um, there are needs for, you know, project managers and programmers and marketers and people who can type in a spreadsheet. There's really, you know, no matter what your skill set is, you can definitely find somebody that needs your help in some way that you can jump in and make a difference.
Tom, I'd like to thank you again for being here and for all you're doing to help amid the COVID-19 pandemic. I'd also like to thank all our viewers and listeners for joining us. You can listen to more episodes of Dynamic Developer on your favorite podcast platform or watch a video of each episode as well as read a transcript at Tech Republic.